Welcome back to Slumbering Stones. Tonight we sit in the ruins of the greatest library of the ancient world and listen to the few voices that still speak about it. This story is made for sleep, so drift off whenever you like. Tell us in the comments which lost book you would want back. Now dim the lights and settle in. An honest word first. The library kept the writing of the whole world and almost none of its own. No catalogue survives. No floor plan, no list of its rooms. What we have tonight are other people's voices, written down elsewhere, and often long afterwards. We will tell you whose voice each one is. The city was young when the library began. Alexander founded it, and the Ptolemies who came after him made it the first city of the Greek-speaking world, a great harbor, a lighthouse, and a court with money in auto buy anything it wanted. What it wanted, it turned out, was books. Our first voice belongs to a geographer named Strabo, who walked through the place himself around the time of Augustus. He does not describe a library at all. He describes a museum, a Mauseon, a house of the muses set inside the royal quarter. He lists it plainly, like a man taking inventory, a covered walk, a hall with seats, a great house with a common dining room where the scholars ate together, and a priest in charge, appointed once by the kings and in Strabo's own day by Caesar. That is very nearly the whole description, a handful of lines for the wonder of the age, and notice what is missing. No shelves, no reading room, no word about how a visitor found anything. Because he did not write it down, we have been guessing ever since. The second voice belongs to a doctor, Galen of Pergamon, writing some 400 years after the library was founded, and drawing, he says, on the notes the Alexandrian scholars left behind. He tells us how the shelves were filled. There was a law of the harbor. Every ship that docked at Alexandria was searched, and any book found aboard was carried up to the library. There it was copied. The copy went back to the traveler. The original stayed, shelved under a note that read, "From the ships." Galen tells one more story, and it is the better one. Ptolemy III wanted the official Athenian texts of Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides. The master copies, kept by the city, checked against, never lent. He asked to borrow them and left 15 talents of silver as a bond. He had beautiful copies made, on the finest material money could buy. Then he sent Athens the copies, kept the originals, and told the Athenians they were welcome to the silver. It was theft, and everyone knew it, and he did not mind at all. There is something almost frightening in that hunger. The third voice is the quietest of all, because it is a voice made of lists. Somebody, after all, had to make sense of the flood. Zenodotus of Ephesus is the first librarian whose name we still have. Later accounts credit him with putting the scrolls in order by letter, and with tying a small tag to the end of each roll, giving the author, the title, the subject, so a scroll could be known without unrolling it. After him came Callimachus, a poet with a cataloger's patience. His tables, the Pinax, ran to 120 scrolls, listing the Greek writers, their works, and how each one opened. A catalogue so large it needed a library to hold it. It is lost. Of course, it is lost. And then Eratosthenes, who ran the library and who also, in what we must assume were his spare hours, measured the earth. 2 shadows, 2 towns, and the distance between them, and out came the size of the world. How close he came depends on the length of a unit we no longer know, close enough that it is still startling. Not everyone was impressed. The fourth voice is a satirist, and he is quoted on Libcors, somebody else thought the line was too good to lose. Timon of Phlius looked at all these salaried scholars, fed and housed and flattered by the king, and said that in Egypt of the many tribes, many bookish scribblers are kept, endlessly squabbling in the birdcage of the muses. It is a cruel line and a useful one. Useful because you cannot mock a birdcage that does not exist. The joke is evidence. There really were scholars there, paid, fed, and arguing, exactly as Strabo described. Someone was jealous enough to write a poem about it. The fifth voice is not a person. It is a number, and the numbers do not agree with each other at all. Seneca, writing in Rome, says 40,000 books burned. Ammianus Marcellinus, 3 centuries later, says 700,000 were gathered by the Ptolemies. Modern scholars are skeptical of the larger figures. One has pointed out that if every known Greek writer of the age had produced 50 scrolls, the total would still fall far short. So the honest answer is that we do not know. We cannot count what nobody counted. Only this seems certain. There were more books there than anywhere else on earth, and that was rather the point. Which brings us to the last voice, and the one everybody thinks they already know. The fire, here the story is more complicated and much sadder. In 48 before the Common Era, Julius Caesar was besieged in the city and set fire to ships in the harbor. Ancient writers say the fire spread. How far it reached is disputed. Many historians now think what burned was a store of scrolls near the docks, and not the library itself. Scholars were still working there long afterwards. What ended it was slower than fire, kings who stopped paying. A generation of scholars driven out in a family quarrel over the throne, a Rome with other things on its mind. A library does not need an enemy. It only needs to be forgotten in a budget. There was a second, smaller library in the Temple of Serapis, and a Christian crowd destroyed that one in 391. It is often told as the end of the Great Library. It was a different building, and by then, Great Library had already been gone a long while, and the tale of the caliph who burned the books to heat the bathhouses appears in no source for 600 years after the event. Historians treat it as legend. Someone always wants a single villain. Making this episode, one thought stayed with us. We keep asking who burned the library, because that is a question with an answer at the end of it. The truer answer is that nobody did. It was let go of slowly by people who each assumed that somebody else was still keeping the copies. That is not a story about fire. It is a story about attention. The harbor is dark now. Somewhere behind us in the city, a copyist has finished for the night and let his lamp go out. Nothing is being lost this evening. The voices we heard are still here, faint and enough. Let your breathing slow and let the day go. Good night from slumbering stones.